Gift giving is an important part of many cultures and holidays, and although many of us are working hard to shift how we give gifts, focusing on consumables and experiences, toys for little ones remains one of the biggest clutter challenges. On today's episode, I uncover the worries of parents and share the reassurances from a teacher and parenting coach. While our focus is on infant to elementary age, my guest and I cover many decluttering tips that will help whether you're a parent, grandparent, or family member looking to make a difference. After all, decluttering isn't only about dealing with what you have, it's about being selective about what you allow into your space as well. You're listening to the Positively Living Podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Zawrotny, founder of Positively Productive Systems and a coach certified in time and stress management, helping clients make space for what matters most in their lives. Join me each episode and we'll talk about decluttering, stress management, habits, personalized productivity, gratitude, and so much more. I understand the overwhelm of life because I'm a wife, mom to kids and cats, and a former caregiver. I'm here to help you choose what's right for you so you can do less, live more, and breathe easier. Sound good? Let's get to it. Today, I welcome Danielle Bettman to the Positively Living Podcast. Danielle is the owner and parenting coach of Wholeheartedly. She created her business to come alongside parents to equip them with deeper understanding of their child's behavior and problem solve their unique struggles, helping them feel more confident in guiding their children in the early years. She believes all parents want what's best for their children, but becoming a parent is the hardest and most important role we've ever signed up for, and the one we've received the least training for. She offers one-on-one parent coaching to come alongside parents to equip them with the tools, mindsets, and perspectives they need to be the parent they want to be. She also started a podcast called Failing Motherhood to normalize the struggle and share vulnerable stories of feeling like a failure. I'm putting that in air quotes. Driving home the message that you are the parent your child needs. Danielle and I connected as fellow coaches over our appreciation for decluttering and the need to see the why behind what you own. The reason we both believe in decluttering is because we both see overwhelm in our clients coming from having too much. We aren't saying you need to have a certain amount of things, which is often a misunderstanding applied to the minimalist movement. But when it comes down to it, the fewer items you have, the easier life will be for you. Danielle says the less you own, the less owns you, and that is true for more than just toys. Today, Danielle and I cover the physical side of decluttering as relates to children's toys. But as you'll see, mental and emotional decluttering are never far away. Understanding how your family works best and what both you and your space can handle is a key component to having the right amount of things in your environment. Danielle and I discuss the 3 biggest reasons why parents are stressed out with excess toys. 1. The well-intentioned desire to have the right toys for development. 2. Generous family. And 3. Sentimental gifts and hand-me-downs. We dig into each and give you perspective on each of those as well as permission. Permission to do what's best for your family. Much like episode 22 with Katie Zarowski on clutter-free gift giving, Danielle and I talk about engaging the family and being self-aware with how you and your family approach gift giving. She mentions the 5 love languages as well. We also cover engagement and communication with children, what to expect from them, and how to handle budget and value concerns, especially when it comes to expensive children's items. The most encouraging part is that these are lessons that will carry them through to adulthood and will create an environment most conducive to development, growth, and love. And don't we all want that? One of my favorite takeaways to figure out the best toys is to think in terms of how the toy teaches versus entertains. Both have their place, but if developmental influence is important to you, then go with the simple, tried and true options, like blocks. They are classics for a reason. If you're looking to buy toys this holiday season and would like more specific recommendations, be sure to visit Danielle's site, parentingwholeheartedly.com, for her Christmas gift guide, which is categorized and organized to make it easy to see her suggestions. If this episode has inspired you to declutter more, you may want to listen to the following episodes as well. Episode 2, Declutter Your Life with the Simple System. Episode 6, Sorting Out Life with Super Organizer James Lott Jr. Episode 17, How Simplicity Sparks Joy with Tim Lucier. And Episode 18, Declutter Through Delegation with Liz August. Welcome, Danielle Bettman, to the Positively Living podcast. Danielle, you and I connected over the topic of decluttering and our shared appreciation for how critical it is to understand the behavior behind it in order to declutter in a way that works and that lasts, because that's what we want. And what I hear most often from my audience, probably because it's mostly moms, is how do I declutter toys? And that's your specialty. And that's why I'm so pleased to have you here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Would you start by telling us a bit about who you are and who you help and really what makes you light up?
Yeah. So my name is Danielle Bettman. I have a company called Wholeheartedly that I started a few years ago. And by trade, I am a certified teacher. But my business is all about helping equip parents that are parenting kids from age 1 to 7, especially the strong-willed ones, and especially the parents that have a really bad dynamic of like good cop and bad cop. I help them write a family business plan. I help them create individualized solutions for the discipline problems that they're having. And I just help everybody get along, which is really hard to do in a pandemic, actually. So we have our work cut out for us as parents right now. But one aspect of the work that I've done with my one-on-one clients in home consultations is the decluttering aspect, because we either get to a good place and then realize, okay, now our parenting is working, but what's not working for us is our environment. And we need to help get that on board with some better tools or some better organization for these toys, because the way that we parent is so interconnected with who we are and our whole daily life. It's not just like this compartmentalized slice. It's all of it. And so much of that is wrapped up into the chaotic aspect of our environment, or how much we're stepping on Legos, or how many times we're going crazy because we picked up this darn black box of blocks again. So much of what we're doing with our sanity is connected to our environment, and especially our parenting with our playroom or our kids' rooms. And there's so much to unpack with that, but that's what I help parents do. And I actually personally have moved from a house to an apartment with a 2 and a 3-year-old. So I get how hard it is with how much stuff you feel like you have to have for your kids. And I like to give parents permission as a parenting coach to say, yes, all of these things are wonderful and great and educational, but they are not as good as a parent that stays calm, or as a environment in your home that is peaceful, or as a workload that is manageable. So we need to prioritize those things and realize all of the other junk that's holding us back from what we really want and being the parent that we really want to be.
I love that so much, but you already know that because that is the key right there. It's all well and good. We want the best for our children. Of course we do.
Of
And
course.
when you're asking that question, that means you're a good parent. So right off the bat, congratulate yourself for all you've done. And like you said, we are recording this while we are still heavily dealing with COVID. And so that changes the dynamics. But I think it's all the more important that we look at our environment and we look at what togetherness means and how we can make it that much better by adjusting the environment and by letting go. And I love that you give parents permission for that. So there you go. There's your first takeaway. We're giving you permission to prioritize.
I'll write you a slip.
Right? Yes, exactly. I'll get Danielle's signature. We will hand them out. Yes. Basically, you can prioritize your sanity over what you think your children need. And that's what I'm excited to dig in a little bit with you today, just in terms of, making the connections developmentally and things like that to what we do want to keep and what we can allow ourselves to let go of. And again, it's going to depend on everyone's environment, whether you
Right.
are in an apartment or a very large house, how many kids you
Mhm.
have, and, just so many aspects to how we're living our day-to-day life, and what kind of family we are, and what our priorities are, really.
Exactly.
And I just want to clarify again. So kids 1 through 7, you said, right? So we're talking about elementary school.
That's why I specialize with behaviors. Yes. Yep.
So that's what we can speak to the most.
And they're the ones with the most junk.
Well, that's just the thing. That's a really great point to bring up right away, because I am now the mom of middle schoolers, which I can
Oh
hardly
boy.
believe I'm saying that.
Yeah.
And you're right, their stuff, stuff, junk, so
Right.
many words for
Treasures.
it. Yes, exactly. Their things. It's definitely, they get smaller.
They do.
They do, which is encouraging, but it's still an important question to ask. And I think if we set the foundation with the younger ones, we're not only all practicing together, but we're building the skills as parents to ask similar questions as we go. So this sets the
Right.
foundation for the future. So if you have older children, you can definitely extrapolate from our conversation as well.
For sure. For sure.
So, as you said, you came to specialize in this, probably for similar reasons that I wanted to chat with you today, that you are coaching parents, and this is a question that's being asked, and there's a worry there. So, is
Hmm.
that like the big pain point that you would see, the big struggle that you would see? It's like, well, I want to make sure I have all the right things to help my children developmentally, or do you see other problems? What's going on there?
Yeah, it's a bit of an idea to unwrap. So there's a few things at play. A big one is, of course, the well-intentioned. I want to make sure that my child gets access to this shape sorter so that they can learn their colors and figure out their shapes. And I've heard that that's really important. So I obviously need one of those. Of course, that's coming from a place of really, really good parenting. But then that's also the toy that drives them insane because it's constantly dumped out. And that's we need to make sure that those two things are both being taken into account.
Hmm.
There's also the idea that, there's generous grandparents and there's so many holidays and there's all of the gifts. And we love to see kids open gifts, and kids love gifts. And that just becomes a problem because they never stop. And there's always something new around the corner of the bringing in more things. So if we don't have a good rhythm of one in, one out, and being able to donate and being able to keep things within contained spaces, then that's going to get out of hand very quickly. And then we also feel really bad about things that are someone gave us that has sentimentability attached to it, that has a story that maybe was a hand-me-down. And so someone's going to come look for it later and we need to keep it around. And so we just keep things around for all of the just in case, maybe we'll use it next season. Maybe we'll bring it for have it for another sibling. And there's just so much of that mental load and that decision fatigue that comes into play when it comes to, should I donate this item or not? It's just never that easy.
Yeah. And again, these are things that are going to be very personal to you, and they're a challenge. This is why we have coaches to help, because
Yes.
sometimes you can get stuck on these things, but hopefully we can unpack enough today to encourage you and to get you started. So, let's start with the first part of it, the well-intentioned, the developmental kind of things, and trying to find that balance. And I can tell you an example with me when I was first pregnant. A friend of mine had like this list that I was supposed to get from Babies R Us, and
Mm,
I was like, I really need all these things. Like, it's
right. Starts there.
overwhelming, right? It starts there, and it starts that soon. But wherever you are in the process, there are a lot of well-intentioned resources out there, friends and blogs and things that say you
Mhm.
need all these things. How do we reconcile that, Danielle?
Yeah. The struggle is real.
It is,
And
it
it was
is.
even more for me as a teacher that had worked in classrooms, that knows, books and toys so well, that I basically wanted them for myself, let alone my kids.
Yeah.
So I felt that pressure a lot, just having, a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old, of saying, okay, the 2-year-old needs to have, has to have these puppets and they have to have these things and they have to have these things. Well, we still only have the space that we have. So I really had to get really in tune to the season that they're in right now. And the only things that can be out are the things that are currently serving their developmental season right now and their interests right now. And those things evolve constantly. So we never really arrive. Like our living room and our playroom and their bedroom are just always changing because they're always changing. And the more that we are really in tune to that, then we can have a really good idea of, okay, this hasn't been played with for a really long time, or, oh, it's finally time to get the swing out of the living room, or whatever it is. And then realize, okay, what would be better for this age? Actually, they're probably going to be learning to crawl soon, so let's go get a walker or something. You just always have to be on your toes with that. And then you're really serving them well, scaffolding their development, really attunely. But then also, there are so many good things out there, and there's always going to be something new coming out, or something, walk in a toy shop and you're just going to be overwhelmed. And they're all fantastic, great things. But that doesn't mean that your child's going to miss out if they don't get access to that thing. And that doesn't mean that you have to have that thing in your living room for it to count, because our kids usually in non-COVID times get access to many opportunities for play, whether that's at a church or at a daycare, at a friend's house, at grandma's house. So that's the sum of all of those experiences that they're able to get access to. So like when we got these big cardboard blocks from Melissa and Doug that are so much fun to play with, but had absolutely no space for our kids to play with those, we donated them to our church, and then they used them in this like break room that kids got to play in. So every Sunday they still got to build and have access to that, but it didn't have to be at our house. So that's one way to get out of it as well. And then the last one that I really like to tell the families that I'm working with that are just like, but I can't get rid of the shape sorter. I tell them, you have to prioritize happy mom, happy kids, whatever keeps you sane, whatever helps you have a manageable amount of workload of things to keep up with, that is still better than any one single educational toy in and of itself. And you have to be able to just say, this is the amount that we can have right now. And our kids will be super super smart, they'll be fine. And there's also levels to that where there is a lot of great things, but they may have different purposes. Like the toys that do a lot, that advertise on the box, like, this toy is amazing because it does this and it lights up and it sings and it does like whatever, and you have to put the A in and it sings the ABCs. Like whenever a toy is bragging about itself, that means that it's not asking a lot of your child, and that means your child's actually not learning from that toy, it's being entertained. And there's a time and a space for that, but really the rules to live by when it comes for looking for really good quality toys is the most open-ended and the most toys that basically don't do anything on their own. Those are going to be the ones that should be the anchors of your playroom and that you keep around, like the play food, like the blocks, like the magnet tiles, things like that just lay on the floor unless your child engages with them. Then they're able to have more creative, imaginative experiences, and they're able to go deeper with those things, and they're able to activate a lot more areas of their brain. So there still is kind of levels to that that's helpful to keep in mind.
Yeah. So when in doubt, go with the classics,
Yes.
things that they're going to be interactive. And I like that. Think in terms of, with these filters, what your child's learning with the toy versus being entertained. And there's a time and place, and maybe you have a combination, or maybe you allow for, I like the idea. And again, this is with, appropriate safety precautions, depending upon where you are and what the world is like at the time that you listen to this, and who is in, your inner circle of people. If you are in fact connected with grandma and grandpa, or aunts and uncles, or different kinds of family members, there may be opportunities, like you said, to have different toys at different locations, which is actually fantastic, because then they maintain their novelty status, which is huge for kids, right?
It's huge. Yes.
Yeah, huge. But in the meantime, the other basic like go-to is, what are the classics? What are the things that they're going to interact with? And so if you are coming from this space of wanting to make sure developmentally what you have is appropriate, that's a great way to go. Excellent. Thank you. Okay, so now how about, and I did want to ask about this, the let's say we'll go with grandparents because they are frequently so generous, or
So
generous family
generous.
members who want to give. This is gift giving. I just had a podcast episode out with Katie Zarowski talking about clutter-free gift giving and that challenge that we have and how to engage the family in opportunities. But what's your take on this, Danielle?
Yeah. So I really encourage parents to be very appreciative. Some grandparents will be open to the idea of the suggestions and, experiences rather than the toys. And you can, navigate that relationship before the holiday or birthday as much as, that's possible for you.
Mhm.
But if a grandparent or person is just going to buy whatever they're going to buy and it's going to come into your home and they're going to give it for the birthday, then they're doing that out of a pure intention that wants to bring joy to that child. They want to improve your home and take that for what it is, and that happened, and then now it is yours and it's your decision of what to do with that. And your loyalty is to your kids and your family to know what's best. And you can act out of that and draw a boundary that says, okay, this toy is not working for us. It's not bringing us joy. It's not serving us. So I'm going to make the decision of, sharing this to a friend or donating it to, a toy drive or whatever it is. And then, thanking that person for the joy that it did bring. But it does not, like, gifts can't come with an obligation that says, you need to now keep this in your living room for the next 3.5 years. And then once that expires, then you can pass it on, unless, it is something that's a family heirloom and you have that conversation. But I encourage parents to, again, they have permission to get rid of things that aren't working for your family for whatever reason. And you don't have to give this whole long explanation so that they understand. It's okay to be misunderstood, and just know that you're acting out of what's the best interest for your kids and for your family, because you are the expert. You're the CEO of your family, and you have to just make those decisions as they come along.
That's right. And gifts are not supposed to come with strings attached. If they
Right.
are, that's a whole different conversation, a whole different
Yep.
podcast of what's going on. But you're right, to acknowledge and thank. And this is, there's a similar concept with Marie Kondo's approach, right? Of
Yeah.
acknowledging and thanking, whatever it is that you have for that moment. And it could be as simple as the moment of your kids opening it and of the novelty of it and the excitement and the intention that came with it. But then, as you said, now that it belongs to you, when you take possession of it, you have the ownership, which means you get to make the decision. And depending upon your situation, you may have extra attic space or extra storage space somewhere where you could rotate in and out gifts or things like that. Or you could set something away and say, maybe a couple months down the road, we'll bring it out and we'll do something like that. I've had an opportunity, of course, I've been blessed with amazing grandparents, to ask them if maybe we could wait on one particular thing and bring that out for the birthday instead, or, things like that. So it's always good to communicate, appreciate, but know ultimately it's your choice.
Exactly.
All right. And how about the sentimental part?
Yeah. Then it gets even more hairy, because there is a story behind every item in your house. And that could be a really meaningful story that, represents that person that gave it, or represents, something from your childhood, or represents a hope that you had, for that child, or for future children. And so there's a grieving process with getting rid of some things. It's a lot to unpack, which is why it's helpful to have a non-biased party there to kind of be able to bounce that off of them. And so they can kind of help you weed through all that. But I have brought in things from, my childhood that my parents have brought me, that have brought us so much joy to have a time of playing with. But then they just don't find the joy in that item that I did when I was little. And so then we've just had to kind of move on and not have those things anymore. We just played with them once, and then it served its purpose. But then there's other struggles with, the implications of a hand-me-down, or If something was given by someone who's passed on, then you want to keep those memories. But doing it in a way that you are actually serving that story is really important. So just having something in a box forever and ever that you never actually see again doesn't help either. It's better to have just a few things displayed prominently, or given anchor space in a room, or put behind a frame or something that really does give them the honor it deserves. And having less of that usually helps make that possible. So I think it's, again, an emotional thing, but helpful to think really analytically with a goal in mind.
I think the key word in there that I would love to bring out is this idea of honoring, because when you think about it that way, then you are staying connected to the emotional challenge that you have with this object, that you're
Right.
honoring it in the right way. As you said, if it's stuck in a box somewhere, you're not honoring it. You're keeping it on principle. It's not serving you. And even if it's in a box and you're technically thinking it's in a box, so I have room for it. When you think about the grand scheme of the space in your house, when you think about maybe the obligation that you continue to feel for some
Right.
reason, I'm going to bring it up right now. On The Big Bang Theory, Penny gives Sheldon a gift and she's like, it's just a gift. And he's like, you haven't given me a gift. You've given me an obligation.
Yeah,
And
kind of
it's
feels like it.
right. And so it can feel like that sometimes, whether it's from your family, whether it's handed down, or whether it's an actual gift that someone's given you. We need to release the idea that this is an obligation and rather take on that idea that now we say what's best for our family.
Right.
And does this fit? Does this fit? And I think this also goes back to some of your first points about considering seasonality too, and where we are, where they are developmentally. I did keep a few select things from a collection that my mom kept that was huge, mind you. And I brought it down to just a few select things. And I brought them out for my children to each experience. And of course, having two, that changed how I sort of approached it. And I kept a few things around to see how they would interact with it, how they would play. And they had their fun. And they had a time in which they were interested, but I also had to honor their preferences as well, that when they were done with it, I needed to be okay with that. Again, not saying that
Yeah.
it's easy,
No.
but here we are giving not only permission, but encouragement to say, you can look at something and decide whether or not it fits in your life. And honoring it can not only be using it, but then letting it go and blessing someone else with it, or
Right.
simply saying, the time is done. And the other point that you made that I think is so, so important is this idea of a grieving process, and that this is hard, especially if there are really extensive emotions attached with it. Like you said, if there's a loss of a loved one that's involved, or it can it can trigger many things.
Right.
So we are
Yeah.
definitely acknowledging it's hard, but
Yes.
it's all coming back to your why of your family, right? Yeah, I
When
love
your
that.
why is big enough and your vision is clear, then you're able to make these tough decisions with help that allow you to get to that end goal, rather than just always feeling like you're trudging through the, eventually we'll get there phase, which never pays off.
Right, exactly. So the why is where you want to start. And that's something that you do with families, right? Is
Yes.
figure out that part of it.
Yes. Yeah. The family business plan process helps you identify your family's core values and the ways that you spend your money, and really what's unique about your family's personality and identity that's different from a family next door. And that leads you to writing your family mission statement, and then really kind of talking about what that looks like to apply day to day with a trajectory to get there. But ultimately, we need to have that differentiation and those things that are kind of core to us to help us make those decisions clearly, and not just be influenced by the next shiny object or what our friends are doing. And our kids find a lot of security and belonging when we're really clear about those things, about, in our family, we do it this way, and this is important to us. And being able to state it in a way that helps them come alongside that mission is a really powerful way to lead by example.
Oh, I love that. And you segued beautifully into how we can handle the comparison issue that
Mm-hmm.
can come up, and especially kid to kid. Now, when they're younger, maybe not so much, but I think as you get into elementary school, there can be a comparison in
Mm-hmm.
terms of, especially when they have the opportunity to play with their friends and they see
Yep.
certain toys that they have and stuff like that. And it's for us personally, it's been a dialogue of saying, well, that's great that you get to play with that when you go to your friend's house. But
Yes.
I love this phrase that you're saying, in our family, we do it this way.
Mm-hmm. Because for our kids, living in an apartment versus going over for a play date at a friend's, giant house, they don't understand, especially at a young age, why things look so differently, like why we share a bedroom when this other person has a whole room. And so they're naturally going to have those questions because they're piecing together a worldview. They're trying to understand who they are. And, they are very egocentric in the present. So things are a really big deal. So when we validate those concerns, then we can have a conversation that really shares, like, this is what our situation looks like. Here are the limitations that we face. Here are the decisions that we've made as a family. We are investing in private school. So that means that we have to say no to other things in life. And, maybe we can have that someday and we'll work towards that. But again, it's great that you get to play with that at a friend's house. And we can always, write down some things for the next holiday or birthday that you would really like to have. And we'll kind of save those things or take pictures of those things. But honoring that, of course, it's not wrong for our kids to be curious and to be, wanting new things. They shouldn't feel shame for that. But we can, honor that and then, kind of create the picture of how that fits into the mold of how our family is living our life. And the more that they understand that, the more that they'll kind of ascribe to that. But it is still hard because they're separate people with a totally different, viewpoint. So we're not always going to see eye to eye.
Sure. And, part of it is the challenge of being in a family unit and being
Yep.
able to work together and find the compromises. But I do love the idea of letting them wish and create wish lists and,
Mm-hmm.
take photos. And even I've often encouraged things like vision boards and things like that. So these are things you
Mm-hmm.
work toward. And what you were describing in terms of, okay, this is how we do it, and this is why we're doing it, and we're saving for this, or this is what we have room for in whatever capacity,
Yep.
whether it's the physical room or the room in our budget. And the other thing that I love to do along those lines, and it's part of the reframing process, is to say, well, we don't have room, or we're not making room for these things, but we also get to do this instead. When we have
Mm-hmm.
fewer things, it takes us far less time to clean up and get ready, and we get to go
Yes.
out and play more often. And you can switch it up to show them the value of whatever it is that's your threshold of the things that you have and how you live and what your environment is. And again, that's all personal, but you can
Yep.
show them the value of it and why it matters to your
Yeah,
family.
there's a lot of teaching moments there. We can really instill some good values and helping our kids understand, wants versus needs, and, when enough is enough for them to be able to do that as an adult. And yeah, there's a lot of potential there to really help clarify their mindset as you clarify yours.
Oh, I love that. Okay. So I think, to wrap up this whole idea, because those three topics, I think, and some of the ideas that you've described within them are great first steps to kind of look at each of those. And again, starting with the why. And one of the
Mm-hmm.
things you mentioned earlier that I want to bring up again is that, you can do this, and that your children will develop, and nobody's going to miss out on Harvard because you missed a toy. But what other
Right.
either first steps or words of encouragement would you say?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's normal if you feel like your kids are extremely possessive or sentimental. and they have categorized every item they've ever touched and can remember the receipt they held in their hand 3 months ago. Like, that's normal. Kids are controlling because they want to feel safe in their world, and they have kind of a bucket that they need to feel in control of their life with. And that helps with that. So that's normal, and expect that. And you can honor that in a way that gives a boundary around that, to say, I give my kids a little shoebox that they have in their room, and that's their special box. And they can put anything they want in their special box, whether that's a McDonald's trinket or a wrapper or a note from someone or whatever it is. And they can save those things in a safe spot and know that no one's going to do anything with those things. Now, if it becomes like, there's 4 treasure boxes now, we need to maybe cut that down. But then that kind of honors that in them, to say, like, if this means a lot to you, absolutely go put it in your treasure box. But if there are things that are, have been sitting in the car for months, or, there's other expectations of, maybe your art project is going to last a week, and then we'll kind of trash it, or like there can be other ways that you have that give and take of, I see that this is important, but here's how this needs to work within our family's realm of how we function and have sanity. And so kind of working out some of good guidelines around, like, maybe when you go through the drive-through and they get a toy, that toy, you get to play with it the rest of the day. And then it goes, maybe in a donate box or something. Like, it's okay to have guidelines like that isn't harsh. It's helpful for our kids. The more that they really feel like there are consistent boundaries, then they feel safe within those and they work with around that. But when they feel like it's just very inconsistent and things are just randomly disappearing, that makes them clamp down even more. So give them a heads up if you're ever going to go through some of their stuff, and then put things in like a purgatory, so that if they do remember something that you didn't know they meant a lot to them, then you have kind of a safe time period to reconcile that before things are, for sure gone. But there's other things that make it hard too, that I do want to throw out as disclaimers, like maybe giving gifts is your love language, and maybe it's your kid's love language, and so you're constantly kind of filling that need by bringing new things into the home, and that can easily, spiral. So just having that awareness helps you kind of keep that in check. But maybe also you're buying gifts to, bathe them over in an errand. So every time you go with them to Target, they expect, to get something so that you make it through that trip. And, that's not really serving you or them either. And knowing if that's the way that you're kind of keeping that as a crutch, that there are better ways. And that's just, hey, call a parenting coach for help with that. But then the money aspect of it too is a real limiting factor to, this walker cost me $75. So I need to keep it around just so we get the use out of it. Or, I need to list it and make sure I can sell it to get some money back. Or, I need to figure out what I can do to save money around this item. And that can be a huge block for us. So we need to make sure that as parents, we acknowledge that, yes, we've spent money, but we're also constantly spending our time on either maintaining that item or fixing that item or moving that item and keeping that item. And it's taking up a lot of space in our head. And our time is our most precious commodity, even more than money. So thinking about what we're costing to have things as a part of our house too can really help sort through, okay, well then what is the best next step with this item in particular that's giving us a hard time, and be able to sort through that a little bit more. Sorry, I kind of went all over the place on that one.
No, there were some really, really important points that you brought up that I want to highlight. The first of which is this idea of engagement with your children. And that was one thing that I wanted to talk about today. So I'm so glad that you brought it up in this wrap up, which is that in as much as you can, developmentally, whatever they can understand, giving them some control, some understanding, some communication surrounding this. And when they understand the why, when they get to choose, when they know the process, it's something that I talk about with clients all the time. I know frustration can come when you have that overwhelm, and then you want to just declutter all the things and you're running around with a garbage bag saying, I've had it. And then right. Yeah. Ask me how I know, everyone. But the more that you can talk to them and find out what it is that they love, and what matters to them, the more that you can see the signs, because that's something that you've mentioned, watching what's going on, and you can see what they gravitate toward. You can see what their favorites are. You can see what matters to them, and watching that as it goes. If you honor that and they know you are, you will be much better off. I'm not saying it will be perfect, but
Right.
you will definitely create a pattern with them. Then you're talking about love languages and how we give gifts and that self-awareness. Self-awareness is our number one productivity tool, our number one decluttering tool, our number one everything tool, because when we can see those trends, we can understand. And I will tell you, I have a daughter with a gift giving love language, and that is an opportunity for me to go into consumables, to give her various treats that won't be kept around for a long time, to really promote her, art tendencies, things like that. And
Yes.
then, and the last thing you were talking about in terms of budget and cost and guilt and all those things, there's a term called sunk cost fallacy, where we really want to get the value of an item, what we paid, we want to somehow get that back. And so I need you all to think in terms of, like Danielle said, what it's costing you to keep it. And sometimes you can do it in a very obvious way. If it's taking up a lot of space, think about what your price per square foot of your home is. And you're using that as storage. Or if you have it in a storage unit, you're spending that amount of money to keep it. Think about what it is keeping you from in terms of accessing other things. If it's in the way, there are a lot of opportunities to see not only like what money you could get back, or, how you could get the value out of it, but also what money it's taking from you by staying there. So when you compare it in those ways, you can actually find some logic to back up the fact that if you release it, it's incredible what it will do. And last but not least, stress reduction for parents. When you release, when you declutter, when you can actually walk in your child's room and sit down and you're like, you know what? I do feel like reading with you tonight. I don't know. Is it just me or anybody raise your hands? It's like when the room is cleared out and decluttered and you're like, let's read tonight. I always love reading, but I especially love those nights where I felt like I wasn't taking my life in my own hands to get into the room. So
that's the win-win.
Right? Yeah,
Yes.
that's what we need to remember, coming back to that. How do we want to show up as parents, and what kind of environment will be conducive? Awesome. Danielle, this is like jam-packed value here. Thank you. So let's have a little fun with our wrap up now, shall we? Because that's the other thing we need to do as parents is laugh and be inspired. So the first thing I'd love you to fill in the blank with is the song that always makes me dance is?
I would say Salt and Pepper. Like, I am such a 90s kid. I grew up doing competitive gymnastics like 20 hours a week, and we constantly had Top 40 radio on. So it doesn't matter what the song is, I will remember the lyrics. And it has been, 25 years. It doesn't matter. I can't remember what my password is that I set up yesterday, but I can remember the lyrics to every Salt and Pepper song. So
do you want to pick one that's the favorite?
Push It. Is that what it's called?
Yes, that's the one. I was hoping you'd say that. That will be going on the Positively Living podcast playlist.
I love it.
Which is a great productivity playlist, because energizing songs. That will be a great song to play while you are decluttering your child's
highly
room.
recommend. Yes.
Right? Okay. Yes, would highly recommend. All right. How about the quote or mantra I share all the time is?
I am constantly saying your child's mental health is directly affected by your mental health. And I don't put that to pressure parents. I try to remind them of the power and influence they have in that they should have absolutely zero guilt in prioritizing whatever they need to do so that they can be a functioning human being that can then show up and pour into their kids. So whether it's like, they're 1 or they're 7 or they're 14, our kids thrive off of our vibe. And so that's the most important thing that we can focus on, is just our own ability to stay sane.
Amen to that. All right. And how about the resource, book, or app that makes my life easier?
I'm sure you've had Trello mentioned.
No. First one.
No?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I just got on Trello. My whole business, I have like 9 boards now that are all perfectly organized for all of my podcast guests and all of my clients and all of my business planning into the future. And I feel on top of the world. So
Yes.
Trello is an app and a free organizational, basically Post-its everywhere and things, but it's helping me feel like I know what I'm doing. So
Yeah.
that's amazing.
I heart Trello as well. I've been using it for a number of years and absolutely love it. And it's a very visual project management board. And it's
Mm-hmm.
on my favorites list. I have a favorites list in my resources library, and it's on there as well. So I
Nice.
agree. And last but not least, what or whom are you grateful for today, Danielle?
Ooh, I am so grateful for the fall weather. I know we're recording this in October, but we did move from an apartment into a rental house because our two-bedroom apartment we had been in for 3 years was not lasting through the lockdown quarantine amazingly. And we're having my office and their virtual school and everything in one 10 by 10 room was a little much. So we moved over the summer to a space that has a backyard, and we are just loving life, being able to be outside, and our kids could finally learn how to ride bikes. And so we are just outside as much as possible. So we have 2 big trees that we have all the leaves everywhere that they're getting to rake into piles. And so I'm just so grateful for all the time that we're getting to spend outside, because I know I live in Nebraska. We have like 7 months of winter ahead. So I'm just trying to plug my ears and not remember that winter's coming.
Yes, I'm in New York and I am loving every minute of these gorgeous leaves, and we'll eke out as much as we can. Wonderful.
Yes.
Well, I am grateful for you and for all that you've shared with us today. But the last thing we need to share is, where can everyone find you?
Yeah. So I would love if you come say hi on Instagram. I am at parent_wholeheartedly. Send me a DM and say hi if you are parenting littles, especially a strong-willed one, or you would just love to feel like you know what you're doing a little bit more. And find my podcast. It is Failing Motherhood. It's on all the podcast platforms. Just search it wherever you're listening to this. And my podcast is specifically for moms that are feeling like they're failing, that have a temper, that feel like they need more patience, that feel like they're screwing up their kids. Come join the club and hear from lots of other moms that are normalizing that feeling and helping us not feel so alone and feel like we can do something about that. And then my website is parentingwholeheartedly.com, where you can learn more about coaching and what it would be like to work with me, and get on my email list, because I do have a Christmas gift guide coming out so that you can find some really valuable toys that are worth investing in. And I have them organized by age and by developmental domain, along with some stocking stuffers and experience gifts. So if that will be of value to you as your Christmas shopping, I would love to share that.
That will be a great resource, but I will make sure to have links to everything that you mentioned, your website, your podcast, because again, just spoiler alert, you're not failing. So,
No.
so I'll be sure to link to all that in the show notes. Thank you, Danielle. Thank you for shining your light
Yes.
in this world and for sharing it with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been so much fun.
The rules for parents are but 3: love, limit, and let them be. Elaine M. Ward. Thank you for joining me on the Positively Living podcast. Your time is precious, and I'm honored you chose to spend it with me. Would you like to further explore the topics you've heard and implement what inspires you? Could you use some coaching support? What if you could attend a private Q&A with my guests and access bonus content? You can do all that and more in the Positively Living membership community. Check the link in the show notes or head to positivelyproductive.com/membership to enroll. I look forward to having you join me next episode and in the community. Until then, keep it positive and keep making space for what matters most.